Sources tell us that Vance Bolter has been arrested and he is alive. This just coming into our newsroom right now. This is what sources are telling us, that he has been apprehended and that he is alive.
And we can presume that it is happening right there on that area that we are showing you on the map, which is where he was last spotted just minutes ago. This is an area, again, that they have had a lot of focus on throughout the last 24 hours.
Yeah. There have been so many different places, but we knew today that the focus by investigators was Sibley County.
The suspect in the attempted murder of Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette, and the murder of Minnesota State House Representative and former Speaker of the House Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark Hortman, has been captured. He is in custody. We're going to talk about him in a little bit throughout the course of this video, but I want to make something 100% clear to everybody out there in the audience. The display that I saw on social media related to this particular story before the facts were out, before all the information was out, where everybody was just glomming onto one particular thing in order to blame the other side, was disgusting, and it was horrible. And of course, on this channel, we oftentimes focus on the left and how terrible they are when they do these sort of things, but the fact is, I saw a lot more terrible posts from more notable people on the right, and that includes Senator Mike Lee, of all people, who ended up posting a meme of this guy with the caption, "Nightmare on Wall Street." I mean, Mike Lee, you're memeing about this, and unfortunately for you, even if this meme was okay and acceptable if it was a far left person committing the shootings, it turns out, based on the evidence that we have right now, that this guy was politically on the right. He had a list apparently of 45 politicians. Every name so far that has been described of that list have been Democratic politicians. So we're in an absolute disaster scenario. So what I'm going to do throughout the course of this video is cover all the little bits and tidbits of information that people put forward in order to make the case that he believes this or that. And then we're going to go to the overarching message that we have from, obviously, his works and his actions. And to be clear, early on, there was ambiguous things related to what this guy believed, so I don't blame you for getting on board early, but the thing is, you need to avoid getting on board with breaking news, because facts change all the time. Now, we're going to get into this, but before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay.
So right off the top, the first thing that everybody should be doing is wishing Senator John Hoffman of Minnesota a speedy recovery. Obviously, we just can't have a society where state representatives are being targeted for assassinations. It's absolutely horrific. It was horrific when it happened to Gabby Giffords, who is a Democratic congresswoman. It was horrific when it happened to Steve Scalise and all the other reps that were shot at during the congressional baseball game. And by the way, Steve Scalise nearly died. Gabby Giffords nearly died. And John Hoffman was in emergency surgery based on the severity of his wounds, and of course his wife was caught up in the mix. This is unambiguously an act of evil regardless of political ideology. However, it is important to dissect the political ideology of this person because there's a ton of bad information out there. So to be clear, it's not something that comes out of nowhere. So it turns out that the suspect in this particular case, a man that I believe is called Vance Bolter, his last name has like an O and an E in a weird place, but I think that's how that's supposed to be pronounced, was actually appointed to some commission by Governor Tim Walz. So this indicated to certain people that this person might be Democratic leaning. Now, we will come back to that in a little bit. Let me give you the next piece of evidence that people kind of globbed onto. In addition to that, he also had No Kings flyers in the vehicle, which was disguised as a police vehicle, or maybe a purchased surplus police vehicle in the back of his car. And obviously, the No Kings protest is a very Democratic funded organization that is meant to protest against the evil orange man. So again, that's strike two of maybe this guy is a left winger. And in addition to that, one of the representatives that he shot actually voted against healthcare for illegal immigrants in the Minnesota State House. Now, unfortunately and embarrassingly, to be clear, many right wingers globbed onto these couple of factoids. And the fact is, each of of them could be easily explained, and the most difficult of which to be explained is the appointment by Governor Tim Walz, so we'll leave that for last. But let me run through this so-called evidence, this so-called pattern in his actions, so you can understand how ridiculous it was. So first of all, you had the representative, Melissa Hortman, who ended up dying along with her husband, voting against healthcare for illegal immigrants. And there's actually a clip of her where she seems like she's rather distressed in making this vote. I will play that for you because it's been making the rounds.
I know that people will be hurt by that vote, and we worked very hard to try to get a budget deal that wouldn't include that provision.
But separate from this vote, this woman is considered a pretty liberal representative, a strong ally of Governor Tim Walz, and the fact is, this guy drew up a list of 45 different people, according to the reports that we have, not just from the local authorities, but from the federal authorities, and the idea that he was tracking each and every one of their votes in order to figure out exactly what they stood for just flies against what we see from these kind of attackers repeatedly. Again, I tell you all the time, criminals are stupid. And this was objectively an act of evil, but it was also a stupid act because this woman was maybe slightly more moderate than the progressives, and she ultimately ended up blocking healthcare for illegal immigrants in the state of Minnesota. But for some reason, this guy decided that murder was acceptable, which, by the way, would be unacceptable even if she voted in the other direction, and he killed her and her husband, which again is just a scumbag move to engage in, obviously an act of evil, but it's not necessarily proof positive that this guy is a progressive who is angry specifically about that. In addition to that, the No Kings flyers in the cop car, that could have been related to this plot that he initiated in and around the time of the No Kings protests to where he might be going next. I mean, this is the most obvious thing that anybody can imagine. I mean, you guys have to be able to understand that the guy was dressed as a police officer in what looked like a police car, and maybe those flyers were a part of his plot later in order to strike out against his political opponents. Now, of course, we have the appointment by Governor Tim Walz, and I understand a lot of people have this as the hardest hurdle to get over, and to be 100% clear, I understand why you think this is a difficult hurdle, but the fact is, governors and presidents appoint so many people to so many different positions, they don't have actual personal knowledge or friendships or relationships with all these different various people. I believe this guy was appointed to some kind of a security commission or a law enforcement commission, and he was actually trying to start his own security company, according to his friends and relatives. So if somebody recommended him for this particular position, it would not be surprising that he could get appointed. Again, especially when you have a pretty divided government in the Minnesota State House and Minnesota State Senate for Governor Tim Walz to have to get these appointments approved by. Now, on the flip side to the argument that this guy is actually a left-wing Antifa type that's even further left than the Democrats that he targeted, is the people that were apparently on his list. I'm sorry, guys, but no left-wing progressive has Tim Walz and Keith Ellison on their list. Now, I'm not too familiar with John Hoffman's record in the Senate, whether he's a blue dog or he's like an actual crazy progressive or somewhere in between, but it is unambiguous what the left thinks of Governor Tim Walz and Keith Ellison especially. I mean, Keith Ellison is a Muslim, left-wing socialist type that backed Bernie Sanders because of the communism thing, defends and excuses all sorts of terrible Islamic behavior, and this is not somebody that would be on any of these Antifa losers lists. And right behind him in terms of love from the progressives is Governor Tim Walz. I mean, look at his actions, look at their response to him, and look at his kids. A lot of these people genuinely believe that they needed to unleash Tim Walz on the American people in order for Kamala Harris to win the election. In addition to that, he has these crazy woke kids that he instructs them on all sorts of insane ideas, like running is some kind of privilege and it's about class and whatnot, as we've seen in these other videos.
Running as an act is political, and you know who taught me that? Tim Walz. The first thing he told me when I was first getting into it in high school, granted, I don't really do it as much anymore. I go in spurts, but when I was first getting into it in high school, the first thing he told me was that running is a privilege, and being a part of the running community is a privilege that not all people have access to. Whether you do it recreationally or you race a lot or you are, at the elite level, it is a privilege. Whether it be you just having the time to run. access like to funds to buy the gear, access to, healthy quality foods that fuel you as you're training and as you're running, access to, a safe, stable situation that allows you to be in a good mental state to be able to run. All of those things are hard to come by. And if you have them and are a part of the running community, that is a privilege. And that, again, was the first thing he taught me. So I don't really understand how platforming and administration that cuts mental health services, cuts, funding and literal shipments to food banks, is entirely hurting the climate, because you can get into running in the climate. That's a whole nother thing. But it's cutting, funds to climate initiatives and actively hurting the planet in that way. Sending people away without due process, villainizing minorities. All of those things are preventing people from getting into the running community, which is what I thought Kate's platform was for. But it's also just damaging to society as a whole. We should not be normalizing these people. I'm not going to tell anyone what to do with their page, but I think it's insulting to my dad to leave a certain video pinned, especially when he stands for quite literally the opposite of what this administration is doing. You don't get to both sides this. It's not both sides. We are quite literally talking about good versus evil here, and I'm just really disappointed the whole thing happened. I was there when that video with my dad was filmed, and I was very impressed with Kate. And this is just extremely disappointing.
Now, again, these two names on its own are not 100% proof of ideology or anything of the sort. But the fact is, this would be on a deranged, right-wing oriented person in Minnesota's list, not somebody who's a left-wing progressive who's further left than the Democratic Party. Again, especially Keith Ellison. Now, I don't know if there were reports that Congressman Ilhan Omar was on the list. And guys, if we find Congressman Ilhan Omar on the list, a squad member, you know where this guy is coming from. Like, we can't play games about this. And in addition to that, this guy has a very right-wing position on abortion, and there's a bunch of different videos of him speaking on this particular issue. So, to be clear, we have his family saying this was his orientation politically, we have his friends, we have his target list, we have the people that he actually shot at. All of this evidence would indicate that in reality, this was somebody who is committing a right-wing act of violence, and it's perfectly okay to acknowledge that this occurred, that it's completely unacceptable and disgusting, and call it out. You don't lose anything by calling out people like this, because guess what? You don't gain anything by backing these individuals. Now look, obviously there's more information that is going to come out about this case. The guy was captured alive. He should be going on trial, not just for statewide charges, but for federal charges. By the way, the Trump administration should pursue the death penalty for this, make no mistake about it. And through those open court processes, we should get more details, more facts related to this, and that will allow us to determine if maybe he made this 11th hour conversion that some people on the right wing are unfortunately counting on in this particular situation. But as of right now, it's important to call this what it is. It is an instance of right-wing violence. I know the left tears up cities and they have so many more in terms of the number of instances, and that's something to be concerned about, but that doesn't mean you get to ignore this. We're not them. We're not the people that hype up Luigi Mangione and then get mad when somebody acts like Luigi Mangione. And by the way, speaking of Luigi Mangione, who supposedly is a hero because he killed the man that was denying healthcare to all these different various people, even though, by the way, he had no positive impact on the healthcare system, shooting this Melissa Hortman woman, the former speaker of the Minnesota State House, now currently a state representative, after she denied illegal immigrants free government healthcare, that could have been justified under the same parameters from a left-wing ideology. So make no mistake about it, had he been left-wing and been targeting this woman for that purpose, there would be supporters of him. Now, I'd like to be able to say that's not how we roll on this side, but the fact is that there's some of you out there in the audience that are going to say, speak for yourself. So what I'll just say is that's not how I roll, and I condemn every single person that supports this, that engages in this type of activity, because it's absolutely horrific. You lose your moral high ground. You actually are immoral if you support this kind of thing, regardless of the ideology. Make no mistake about it. And again, you have a senator and his wife going through emergency surgery, and a state representative and her husband, who's doing the right thing as a man, answering the door in the night, basically the protector of the home, also getting swept up in this. So innocents are caught in this. The guy was on the run for a long time. Who knows what damage he could have done? And it's absolutely disgusting, cowardly, and horrifying. I mean, again, when you have a fake police uniform and you abuse the position of trust in order to engage in an attack, that shakes a community. That hurts people, and it makes them more paranoid and leads to more damaging results for all kinds of people who are just going to be less trustworthy when they see the siren or a badge. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts related to this particular case. It's based on the evidence that we have as of right now. Obviously, facts can change, but I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Now, there's a reason I waited to cover this story, and I recommend other people wait to cover these kind of breaking news cases. Now, as per usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about absolute madness in Minnesota and madness post this shooting. Till next time.